Hey guys! Tonight we begin with the harsh reality of why your modern sensibilities wouldn't survive 5 minutes in the filthy Middle Ages. We are stripping away the Hollywood glamour, the clean costumes, and the shiny armor to look at the cold, damp, and incredibly itchy truth of the past. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the year 1250. There is no digital alarm clock glowing with red numbers in the darkness. There is no smartphone on a bedside table to instinctively reach for, blinding yourself with blue light as you check the morning news. There is no gentle ramp-up of smart lights simulating a sunrise. There is only the biting, aggressive chill of the morning air and a profound, bone-deep stiffness in your joints. You open your eyes, but there is very little to see. The world is a palette of heavy grays and blacks. The sun hasn't risen yet. It's that deepest part of the pre-dawn, the time when the temperature drops to its lowest point, settling like a heavy stone on the landscape. You are not warm. You haven't been truly warm since perhaps last August. The cold here isn't a crisp, refreshing winter breeze. It is a damp, pervasive entity that seeps through the cracks in the wattle and daub walls, slides across the packed dirt floor, and settles directly into the marrow of your bones. Your first conscious thought is not about coffee, or a shower, or the commute. It is a singular, primal acknowledgement of discomfort. You try to shift your weight to roll over, but your body protests. You are lying on what history books might generously call a bed, but your modern back would recognize it as little more than a torture device. Let's talk about this bed. It is not a mattress. It is not memory foam, nor is it springs wrapped in cotton. It is a sack. Specifically, it is a rough hempen sack, a tick, stuffed with straw, but not fresh. Golden, sweet-smelling straw. No, this straw has been in here for months. Over time, under the weight of your body and the bodies of your family, the stalks have broken down. They have been crushed and pulverized into a fine, gritty dust that compresses into hard, unforgiving lumps. When you first stuffed it, perhaps back at harvest time, it was lofty and somewhat supportive. But now, in the depths of the year, it is thin and matted. In the center, one where your hips rest, the straw has parted completely, leaving you separated from the hard-packed earth floor by nothing more than a layer of coarse burlap. You can feel the cold radiating up from the ground, stealing whatever precious body heat you managed to hoard during the night. And then there is the dampness. Everything in this era is damp. The concept of dry is a luxury you cannot afford. The straw inside your mattress absorbs the moisture from the air, the humidity from your breath, and the sweat from your body. It never truly dries out. It just exists in a state of perpetual clamminess. As you breathe in, you smell it the distinct, earthy, slightly sour scent of mildewing organic matter. It's a smell that clings to your hair and your skin, a musk of old vegetation slowly rotting beneath you. You try to pull the coverlet tighter around your chin. This blanket is likely a rough woolen weave, heavy and scratchy, darker than the shadows in the room. It feels greasy to the touch, heavy with the natural lanolin of the sheep and the accumulated grime of daily use. Washing a heavy wool blanket is a monumental task involving rivers, beating sticks, and days of drying, so it is rarely done. Instead, it accumulates the history of your sleep, the smoke from the hearth, the dirt from the floor, and the oils from your skin. As you lie there shivering slightly as the cold air nips at your exposed nose, you become aware that you are not alone. Privacy is a concept that simply does not exist for you. In the 21st century, you might have your own room, or at least your own side of a large bed. Here, solitude is dangerous and inefficient. Heat is life. And to survive the night, you must share it. You are huddled in a pile. To your left might be a sibling or a child. To your right, a spouse or a parent. You are packed together like sardines in a tin, limbs tangled, breathing in each other's faces. The air is thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, stale breath, and the flatulence of a diet heavy in beans and cabbage. It is an intimate, suffocating proximity. If one person coughs, and they often do, a wet, rattling cough from the wood smoke, you feel the vibration of it through the mattress. If one person tosses and turns, fighting the lumps in the straw, the entire human knot shifts and groans. You might think that huddling together sounds cozy, in a primitive sort of way, but the reality is far less romantic. It is restrictive. You wake up with your arm numb because someone has been sleeping on it. You wake up with a foot in your back. There is no stretching out, no starfish position to greet the morning. You are confined to the space your body occupies, held in place by the crushing weight of the cold and the people relying on you for warmth. And there is something else about the straw mattress that you notice as you lie there, putting off the inevitable moment of standing up. The straw is alive. We often romanticize the pastoral life, but we forget the ecosystems that thrive in organic bedding. As the straw breaks down, it becomes a haven for fleas, mites, and beetles. You feel a tiny phantom tickle on your ankle, then a sharp, sudden itch on your shoulder. You don't even react with surprise anymore. It is just a background sensation of your existence. The bed doesn't just belong to you, it belongs to a thriving colony of microscopic tenants. They wait for the warmth of your body to become active. You are not just a sleeper, you are a buffet. The silence of the morning is not truly silent. It is filled with the small, scurrying sounds of the hut waking up. Above you, in the thatch of the roof, which is black with years of soot from the open fire, you can hear the rustling of mice. They live in the ceiling, dropping dust and occasionally droppings onto the floor below. You hear the heavy, rhythmic breathing of the livestock that share this single-room structure with you, separated only by a flimsy wooden partition. If that, but we'll get to them later. For now, your focus is entirely on the physical sensation of the transition from sleep to wakefulness. Your body feels heavy, almost leaden. The diet of heavy grains and the hard physical labor leaves you in a state of chronic, low-level exhaustion. You didn't sleep in the modern sense of restorative REM cycle bliss. You drifted in and out of a shallow doze, interrupted by the cold, the itching, and the noises of the house. You push yourself up on one elbow. The burlap of the mattress cover is rough against your skin, exfoliating it in the most unpleasant way possible. A cloud of fine dust puffs up from the straw, dancing in the singular, narrow shaft of gray light that is just beginning to pierce through a crack in the wooden shutter. You cough, your lungs protesting the sudden intake of cold. Dusty air. The simple act of sitting up is a battle against the temperature. The air in the room is stagnant and freezing. As you peel the heavy woolen blanket off your body, the heat you've managed to trap evaporates instantly, replaced by a chill that makes your skin prickle and your teeth chatter involuntarily. It is a shock to the system, a daily ice bucket challenge that you never signed up for. You swing your legs over the side of the pallet. Your feet do not land on a soft rug. They land on the floor. It is earth, packed down hard by generations of feet until it has the consistency of concrete, but with none of the insulation. It is damp and freezing. The cold shoots up through your soles, like seizing your ankles. There is no lingering here. There is no hitting the snooze button. To linger is to freeze. The day has begun. Not because you are ready for it, but because the sun is coming. And the work does not wait. You sit there for one final second on the edge of the molding, lumpy sack of straw, rubbing the grit from your eyes, realizing that this uncomfortable, shivering moment is the most comfort you will experience for the next 16 hours. You take a breath, seeing it mist in the air before you, and prepare to face the layers of scratchy, heavy fabric that await you. Because if you think the bed was uncomfortable, then just wait until you get dressed. You reach out into the gloom, your fingers brushing against the rough-hewn wooden peg driven into the wall, searching for the garment you cast aside mere hours ago. The air in the hut is not just cold, it is damp. A heavy, permeating chill that seems to have soaked into everything, including the pile of fabric you are about to put against your skin. There is no fresh laundry waiting for you. There is no scent of lavender or mountain breeze. No soft, tumble-dried warmth. There is only the shirt you wore yesterday, and the day before that, and likely for the better part of the last month. As you pull the linen shift from the peg, it feels stiff in your hands, almost like a piece of parchment that has been left out in the rain and then dried into a crinkled, rigid shape. You slide your arms into the sleeves. The linen is not the refined, softened fabric you might see in a museum or a high-end boutique. This is homespun, raw and unyielding. It is full of slubs and knots, tiny imperfections in the weave that act like miniature pebbles pressing against your flesh. As the fabric settles over your shoulders, instantly sapping the little warmth you had generated under the blankets, you feel the texture like a gentle but persistent scouring pad, abrasive and unforgiving. But the roughness of the fabric is the least of your worries. As the linen warms against your body, waking up with your body heat, so too do the inhabitants of your clothing. You feel it first on your shoulder blade, a tiny, distinct tickle. Then another, near the small of your back. Lice. They are not an occasional nuisance here. They are a constant, crawling reality. They live in the seams of your clothes, hiding in the folded ridges of the linen where your fingers cannot easily crush them. In the modern world, the discovery of a single louse is a cause for panic and chemical warfare. Here, it is simply a part of being human. Everyone you know has them. The priest has them. The lord in the manor on the hill has them. Though perhaps his are hidden beneath velvet rather than coarse wool. You might pause for a moment, slipping your hand under the shirt to scratch, your fingernails raking across your skin with a satisfying, dull rasp. But the relief is fleeting. You know that for everyone you dislodge, there are 10 more waiting in the darkness of the weave. They are your constant companions, tiny passengers that feed on you, their bites leaving little red welts that itch with a burning intensity as the day wears on. You have learned to ignore them. Mostly, you have developed a kind of stoic tolerance, a mental wall that allows you to function while dozens of microscopic legs navigate the geography of your torso. Now comes the second layer. If the linen was stiff, the wool is heavy. You reach for your tunic. It is thick, woven from the fleece of sheep that are bred for hardiness, not softness. The wool still holds the grease of the animal the lanolin. It makes the garment somewhat water-resistant, which is practical for the mud you're about to face. But it also means the tunic smells. It has a deep, animalistic odor, a scent of wet dog and old grease that never truly washes out. As you pull the tunic over your head, the weight of it settles on you like a burden. It restricts your movement slightly, a heavy, shapeless sack designed for durability, not ergonomics. The collar is tight and chafes against your neck. The wool fibers are long and coarse, finding their way through the weave of your linen underlayer to prickle your skin. It is an itch you cannot scratch, trapped between layers, a low-level irritation that will hum in the background of your mind for the next 16 hours. You sit on the edge of the straw mattress to pull on your hose. These are not the sleek, elastic leggings of a Robin Hood movie. They are two separate legs of wool, cut on the bias to offer a little stretch. But mostly they are just stubborn tubes of cloth. You have to shimmy them up your legs, fighting the friction of the fabric. They are baggy at the knees and tight at the calves. Then begins the tedious, fumbling process of tying them up. You have to thread the laces, the points, through the eyelets of your brays, the linen underwear that resembles baggy shorts. Your fingers are numb from the morning cold, making them clumsy and slow. You struggle with the knots, tying the heavy wool hose to your waist. If you tie them too tight, they cut into your hips. Too loose, they will sag around your ankles within the hour, dragging in the filth of the streets. You adjust, retie and tug, the rough wool scraping against your cuticles. You stand up and stomp your feet to settle the fabric. You feel swaddled, encapsulated in layers that don't breathe. The heat of your body begins to build inside this wool cocoon, but it's a clammy, suffocating heat. The lice, energized by the rising temperature, they resume their exploration with renewed vigor. You might wonder why you don't just wash the clothes. But washing is a monumental task. A day-long labor of hauling water, heating it over a fire, and scrubbing with harsh lye soap made from wood ash and animal fat soap that burns your hands and leaves the clothes smelling of chemicals and tallow. And even if you did wash them, drying heavy wool in this damp climate takes days. You only have the one good tunic. To wash it is to go naked, or to wrap yourself in a blanket and do nothing while the sun struggles to penetrate the clouds. So, you wear the dirt. You wear the sweat of the last week, the smoke of the fire, the dust of the fields. You become a walking archive of everything you have touched and everywhere you have been. Finally, you reach for your hood. It is the most versatile piece of clothing you own. A cowl of thick felted wool that covers your head and shoulders. You pull it on, and the world narrows. Your peripheral vision is cut off by the heavy cloth. The sound of your own breathing is amplified, echoing slightly inside the woolen cave around your face. The hood scratches your chin. It smells of wood smoke, so intense it's like burying your face in a charred log. This is the smell of the Middle Ages smoke. It is ingrained in every thread you own. It masks the body odor, the stale sweat, and the animal musk, creating a universal acrid perfume that binds the entire village together. You wrap a belt around your waist, a strip of cracked, dried leather. It's not for holding your pants up. The points do that. This belt is your toolbox. You cinch it tight, feeling it dig into your stomach through the layers of wool and linen. You hang your pouch, perhaps a small knife in from it. The weight pulls at your waist, another drag on your body. You look down at your feet. You slip them into your boots, which are little more than soft leather bags sewn into the shape of a foot. The soles are thin, barely offering any protection from the ground. You can feel the unevenness of the dirt floor through the leather. There is no arch support, no cushioning. Just a layer of dead cowskin between you and the freezing earth. As you wiggle your toes, you feel a hole in your woolen sock. A rough edge that will likely blister your heel before noon. You are dressed. You are encased in scratchy, heavy, smelly armor against the elements. You feel cumbersome, like a bear wrapped in carpets. The itch on your back flares up again, right between your shoulder blades where you can't reach. You twist your torso, trying to rub the itch away against the coarse fabric of the tunic, but it only pushes the wool deeper into your skin. You let out a sigh, the sound muffled by the thick wool of your hood. You are protected from the cold. Yes, but at the cost of every sensory comfort. You are already tired, and you haven't even stepped outside yet. The sheer physical effort of wearing these clothes, of fighting the friction and the weight, adds a layer of exhaustion to your life that you rarely consciously acknowledge. It is just how things are. You turn away from the bed, your heavy boots scuffing against the packed dirt floor. You are ready to face the day, or as ready as one can be when covered in lice and wrapped in rugs. But as you turn toward the door, or what passes for a door, you realize that the air in the hut hasn't just remained cold, it has become unbreathable. While you were wrestling with your hose and scratching at your lice, the fire in the center of the room has been dying, and the smoke has nowhere to go. That smoke does not waft gently up a chimney, because you do not have a chimney. Chimneys are a futuristic luxury, a marvel of engineering reserved for the stone keeps of high lords and the great abbeys. And even they are only just beginning to figure out the physics of the flue. For you, might hear in this wattle and daub box, the architecture is far more primitive, and the physics are far more punishing. The smoke simply rises, lazily and heavily, until it hits the thatch roof above your head. Finding no easy escape, it billows back down, rolling over itself in thick, gray waves, filling the upper half of the room like an inverted ocean of smog. You take your first true breath of the morning, and you immediately regret it. It is not the fresh, bracing air of a new day. It is a thick, cloying soup of particulate matter. It tastes of burnt peat, of wet wood that wasn't dried properly because you didn't have the space to store it, and of the scorched dust of 1,000 yesterdays. The air is heavy, almost solid. It coats your tongue with a gritty, bitter film the moment you inhale. You cough a deep, rattling hack that shakes your ribs, and you realize that everyone else in the hut is doing the same. It is the morning chorus of the medieval peasant, a symphony of wheezing lungs clearing out the night's accumulation of soot. Your eyes are the next casualty. They sting with a sudden, sharp violence, as if someone has thrown a handful of sand into them. They begin to water profusely, streaming tears that cut clean tracks through the layer of grime that has already settled on your cheeks. You blink rapidly, trying to clear your vision, but the haze in the room is physical. It softens the edges of the world, turning the corners of your home into dark, indistinct shadows. The sunlight trying to push its way in from the outside world is strangled by this indoor fog, reduced to weak, milky beams that illuminate nothing but the swirling dust motes dancing in the gloom. You learn quickly, or rather, your body remembers from a lifetime of this, that posture is everything. There is an invisible line in the room, hovering perhaps 4 feet off the packed earth floor. Above this line, the air is unbreathable, a toxic cloud of carbon and ash. Below this line, the air is merely bad. So, you hunch. You adopt the permanent, stooped posture of the indoors, keeping your head low, moving with a crouched, crab-like shuffle. To stand tall in your own home is to suffocate. It is a subtle form of submission, forcing you to bow before the very elements that keep you warm. You look up briefly, squinting against the sting at the ceiling. The rafters, rough-hewn branches that hold up the roof, are not brown or gray. They are jet black. They are coated in a hard, glistening shell of tar and hardened soot, deposited layer by microscopically thin layer over decades. It hangs in little stalactites, dripping condensed filth. Occasionally, a flake of this blackened history dislodges and drifts down, landing in your hair or on your shoulder, adding yet another smudge to your existence. This is the black houses of history, not a poetic name, but a literal description of the interior design. And it is not just the smoke of the fire you're breathing. The air is thick with other things, biological things. You turn your head, your neck stiff and protesting, and look toward the darker end of the hut. There are no walls here, no partitions to separate the living room from the barn. It is all one space. And there, looming in the shadows, are the heavy, heaving shapes of your roommates. An ox. perhaps, or a milk cow, stands only a few yards away from where you slept. You can hear the wet, rhythmic sound of its cud chewing, a grinding noise that never seems to stop. You can see the steam rising from its flanks. The animal smell is overwhelming, a pungent, ammonia-rich wall of scent that mixes with the acrid wood smoke to create a unique, eye-watering perfume. It smells of wet fur, of stale straw, and of fresh manure. You might think it's strange, or even repulsive, to sleep so close to a 1,000-pound beast that defecates where it stands. But as the cold draft seeps through the cracks in the daub walls, you understand the logic. The animal is a radiator, a massive, living, breathing heat source. In the dead of winter, that cow is the only reason you didn't freeze to death in your sleep. But the price you pay for that warmth is the air quality. You are inhaling the evaporated essence of the stable, the dust from their dried dung, the dander from their hides, the methane from their digestion. It all swirls into the cocktail of smoke you are currently choking on. You feel a sense of claustrophobia setting in. Distinct from the simple smallness of the room, it is the claustrophobia of being sealed in. There are no windows? Not really. Glass is a fantasy, a rumor of a material used in the great cathedrals. Something that catches the light of God, not something for a peasant's hovel. If you have an opening in the wall, it is small, a mere slit to minimize the loss of heat, and it is likely covered with a piece of stretched, oiled linen or parchment. This translucent skin lets in a bruised, yellow light, but it blocks the view and, more importantly, it blocks the airflow. You are trapped in a sealed box with a fire that is slowly consuming all the oxygen. The carbon dioxide builds up, making you feel groggy, heavy-headed, and slow. You feel a dull throb behind your eyes, a headache that greets you every morning and lingers until noon. This is the hearth sickness. Though you don't have a name for it, it is just life. It is the feeling of waking up. You rub your face with your hands, and your palms come away gray. The soot is everywhere. It is in your ears, in your nose, under your fingernails. You run your tongue over your teeth and feel the grit. You are slowly, day by day, becoming part of the house, carbonized from the inside out. The fire, now just a bed of glowing red embers in the center of the floor, hisses as a drop of condensation falls from the roof into the ash. It is the only sound in the room other than the animal chewing and the breathing of your family. The silence feels heavy, pressed down by the smoke. You look at the others' huddled shapes in the gray light, rubbing their own eyes and coughing their own coughs. There is no morning energy here, no springing out of bed. There is only the slow, reluctant struggle to oxygenate the blood, to push past the lethargy induced by the bad air. You realize, with a sinking feeling in your stomach, that staying inside is not an option. The home, the hearth, the symbol of safety and comfort, is actually a slow poison. If you stay here, curled up in the warmth, the smoke will continue to weep into your lungs, and the headache will turn into a nausea that makes the day's labor impossible. The only cure for the comfort of the fire is the harshness of the outside world. You crave oxygen. You crave a breath that doesn't taste like burnt dirt. You crave the wind, even if it carries the bite of frost. The atmosphere in the hut has become a physical weight, pressing against your chest, demanding that you leave. The romance of the cozy medieval cottage dissolves entirely as you violently suppress a gag reflex triggered by the sudden waft of the cow lifting its tail. You push yourself up, your knees cracking, keeping your head low to stay under the smoke line. You stumble toward the door, which is barely a door at all. Just rough planks held together with iron nails and hope. You fumble with the latch, your fingers clumsy and cold. You need to get out. You need to escape the warmth that is killing you. You pull the heavy timber door inward, dragging it across the uneven dirt floor. A slice of gray. Morning light cuts through the smoke, illuminating the swirling dust in a sharp beam. The rush of incoming air is sudden and shocking, swirling the smoke into new, chaotic eddies. You step over the threshold, desperate to leave the choking gloom behind. But as your boot lands on the ground outside, you realize the assault on your senses is far from over. You have traded the suffocation of the smoke for something far more tangible and far more slippery. That first step out of the doorway is deceptive. You might expect the reassuring thud of a heel striking earth, a solid connection that signals the start of your day. But here, in the dim light of a medieval morning, the ground does not thud. It squelches. It is a wet, sucking sound, like a deep intake of breath through pursed lips, followed immediately by the sensation of the earth trying to swallow your foothole. You look down, though the gray light offers little clarity. Your boot, constructed of thin, pitiable leather that has seen far too many seasons, has disappeared up to the ankle. It hasn't sunk into soil. Soil implies something natural, something that might one day grow a flower or feed a tree. No, you have stepped into the slurry. This is the defining texture of your life outside the hut, a permanent, gelatinous coating that covers every inch of the village. It is a mixture that defies simple categorization. It is, of course, partly mud. The relentless rain of the region ensures the dirt never truly dries, remaining in a state of perpetual saturation. But to call it just mud would be a kindness. It is a composite material, a thick churned batter of clay, rotting straw discarded from threshing floors, kitchen slops thrown heedlessly from doorways, and the inevitable, ubiquitous waste of both beast and man. You stand there for a moment, the cold seep of the muck already penetrating the seams of your footwear. You can feel the moisture touching your skin, a damp, icy finger sliding against your arch. There is no waterproofing here. There is no rubber, no Gore-Tex, no sealed synthetic barriers. There is only animal hide that acts less like a shield and more like a sponge. You wiggle your toes, a futile attempt to generate warmth, but the sensation is only of wet wool grinding against grit. You pull your foot free with a wet pop, the mud clinging tenaciously, reluctant to let you go. You take another step, and the process repeats. This is the rhythm of your commute. It is not a walk, it is a trudge. It is a heavy-footed, unbalanced lurch where every step requires a conscious calculation of effort and balance. You look up the alleyway. It is narrow, barely wide enough for a cart to pass without scraping the walls of the houses on either side. In the movies, you see wide, sweeping market squares and cobblestone boulevards. You see heroes galloping on pristine horses across dry, dusty roads. That is the fantasy. This is the reality. Paving stones are a luxury for the great cities of the South or the high streets of the capital. And even there, they are often buried under inches of filth. Here, in your village, the road is simply the space left over between the buildings, a depression in the landscape that collects everything that flows downhill. The architecture itself seems to conspire to keep the ground wet. The houses, built of timber and wattle, lean inward as they rise, the upper stories jutting out over the street to maximize floor space in the cramped footprint of the town. These overhanging jetties almost touch in the center of the alley, blocking out the sky. It creates a tunnel effect, a permanent twilight that shields the street from the drying touch of the sun and traps the damp air below. As you navigate this trench, you become aware of the smell. Inside the hut, the smoke was choking, sharp, and immediate. Out here, the scent is heavier, broader, a complex bouquet of decay. It is the smell of biology breaking down. The air is thick with the scent of wet animal fur, of pigsties that are never cleaned, of stagnant water pooling in ruts. And then, there is the human element. You pass a neighbor's door just as a shutter bangs open. You instinctively flinch, pressing yourself against the rough, slime-coated wall of a house. A bucket is upended from the window above. A splash of gray water hits the center of the alley, adding to the volume of the mire. Gardes low. They might cry in the cities, watch the water, but here, there is little warning. The street is the sewer. There is no underground plumbing, no hidden pipes whisking waste away to a treatment plant. Gravity is the only sanitation engineer. Everything goes into the street, and then you wait for the rain to wash it down to the river, or for the pigs to eat what they can. Yes, the pigs. You hear a grunt and see a dark shape rooting around in the filth a few yards ahead. A semi-feral hog, covered in coarse bristles and caked in the same mud you were standing in, is your companion on this walk. These animals are the closest thing the village has to a street-sweeping crew. They roam freely, devouring the garbage, the slops, and the refuse. You give the beast a wide berth. It is large, hungry, and has no fear of you. In a world where starvation is a constant threat, a pig is a valuable, dangerous asset, and it has the right of way. You try to stick to the edges of the path, hoping for slightly firmer ground near the walls of the buildings. This is a common strategy, a social dance of the medieval street. The center of the road, the kennel or gutter, is the lowest point, where the filth is deepest. The edges are slightly higher. This simple topography dictates social hierarchy. When you pass someone of higher status, you are expected to step into the muck, giving them the wall, the cleaner, drier path. Today, at this early hour, you are mostly alone, but you still hug the timber beams, your shoulder brushing against the damp daub, trying to keep your boots from disappearing entirely. It is exhausting. This act of walking, it engages muscles you didn't know you had. Your calves burn with the effort of stabilizing yourself on the slick. Uneven surface. You slip on a hidden stone, your arms flailing to catch your balance. Heart hammering for a second. To fall here is a disaster. It is not just embarrassing, it is a hygienic catastrophe. If you land in this muck, you will be wet and foul for the rest of the day. You have no change of clothes waiting for you. You have no hot shower to scrub away the grime. You would simply have to work, eat, and exist in a coating of liquid waste until it dried into a crust on your skin. The fear of falling makes you stiff, makes you walk with a ragged, tentative gait. You might wonder why no one cleans it. Why doesn't the village come together to scrape the streets? The truth is, they do, occasionally, but the accumulation is relentless. In fact, if you were to dig down beneath your feet, you would find layers of history defined by trash. In many medieval towns, the street level rises by several feet over the course of a century, simply because people build on top of the compacted filth of the previous generation. You are literally walking on the compressed refuse of your ancestors. The ground is not earth, it is archaeology in the making. A layer cake of broken pottery, discarded bones, and organic rot. The wind picks up, whistling down the narrow tunnel of the alley. It bites through your wool tunic, but it does nothing to dry the path. It only churns the smell, wafting the ammonia scent of the tanner's urine vats from across town, mixing it with the local stench of the pig. You pull your collar up, burying your nose in the scratchy fabric, trying to filter the air, but the taste of the street is already on your tongue. It is a metallic, earthy taste. The taste of a world that is teeming with bacteria. A world where sterility is a concept that does not yet exist. You trudge onward, your eyes fixed on the ground, scanning for the least treacherous stepping stones. a broken barrel stave, a patch of gravel, a tuft of hardy weeds. These are the islands of safety you hop between. It requires intense focus. You cannot look at the sky. You cannot admire the sunrise, which is hidden behind the gray wool of the clouds anyway. You must look at the muck. You must respect the muck. Your destination lies ahead. Through the winding, chaotic geometry of the village, you can see the slightly wider opening of the town square. Your throat feels dry, parched from the smoke of the night and the salt of the preserved meat you ate yesterday. The exertion of the walk, the heaviness of the boots, the sheer physical struggle of moving through the sludge has made you desperate for a drink. You crave water. Clean. Clear. Cold water. You imagine it washing away the taste of the smoke and the smell of the alley. You pick up your pace, the squelching of your boots quickening in tempo. You can see the communal well in the center of the square, a stone circle that promises relief. It is the heart of the village, the source of life. But as you step out of the alley and into the open square, approaching the wooden bucket that hangs from the fraying rope, you have to remind yourself that in this time, even the water is a gamble. You are leaving the visible filth of the street for the invisible dangers of the well. You grip the rough, splintering wood of the windlass handle, the cold dampness of the morning seeping into your palms. There is a specific, hollow sound that echoes up from the darkness below, a deep, resonant drip that tells you just how far down the water table lies. You are standing at the communal well, the heart of the village. Though it feels less like a lifeline and more like a game of chance played against the earth itself. The rope, frayed and stiff with age, uncoils slowly as you turn the crank. It is a tedious, rhythmic motion. Creak. Pause. Creak. Pause. The sound is loud in the quiet morning mist, a groaning protest from the dry wood that seems to mimic the ache in your own shoulders. You watch the dark circle of the bucket descend, swallowed by the gloom of the shaft. It disappears into the blackness, and you are left waiting, listening for the splash that signals it has hit the surface. This waiting is a significant part of your morning. It is a moment of stillness where you are forced to contemplate the source of your survival. In the modern world, water is a thoughtless miracle, clear, pressurized, sterilized, flowing instantly from a chrome tap. Here, the water is a heavy, reluctant burden that must be coaxed from the mud, and it is never, ever clear when you finally hear the bucket slap against the water below. You let the rope go slack for a moment, jiggling the handle to encourage the vessel to tip and fill. It takes a few tries. You feel the change in weight through the rope, the sudden, heavy drag as the water rushes in, displacing the air. Now begins the haul. Your muscles verify what your mind already knows: water is incredibly heavy. A gallon weighs over 8 pounds, and your bucket holds several. You lean your weight against the crank, using your entire upper body to winch it back up. The wet rope groans, tightening and compressing as it winds back around the drum. Droplets of cold water fling off the fibers, hitting your face, stinging your eyes. You ignore them, focusing on the rhythm. Turn. Breathe. Turn. Breathe. Your boots slip slightly in the mud surrounding the well, a treacherous slurry of spilled water and trampled earth that never truly dries. As the bucket finally breaches the lip of the stone wall, you reach out to grab the slippery rim, hauling it onto the ledge. You pause to catch your breath, steam rising from your mouth in the chill air, and you look down at what you have retrieved. It is water, technically, but it is not the transparent liquid you dream of. In the dim light of dawn, it looks gray, perhaps tinged with a faint, sickly brown. There is sediment swirling at the bottom, a miniature sandstorm of grit and silt. Floating on the surface, there might be a few flecks of moss, a dead beetle, or bits of straw that have blown in from the street. You stare at the liquid, and a knot forms in your stomach. You know, on an instinctual level, that this water is dangerous. You don't know about bacteria. You have never heard of a microbe or a parasite. Germ theory is centuries away, but you know that the village cesspit is only 20 paces away. Uphill. You know that when it rains, the streets turn into rivers of waste that soak deep into the porous ground. And you know that the ground eventually feeds this well. There is a common myth that people in the Middle Ages never drank water, that they only drank ale or wine because the water was so deadly. Like many things, this is only half true. Yes, you drink ale. Everyone does. It is a source of calories, a way to preserve grain. And the alcohol content does help kill some of the nastier things living in the liquid. But you cannot survive on weak beer alone. You need water for cooking. You need water to make the pottage. You need water to wash the few clothes you own, even if washing them in this muck seems counterintuitive. And sometimes, when the heat of the summer harvest strikes, or when you are simply too poor to afford the grain for brewing, you drink this. You pull a ladle from your belt, a carved wooden cup that has seen better days, and you hesitate. The smell coming off the bucket is distinct. It smells of wet limestone. Yes, but underneath that, there is the faint, metallic tang of rust and the sweet, cloying scent of decay. It smells like the earth is rotting. You have seen what bad water does to a person. You have watched strong men wither away in a matter of days, stricken by the flux, their bodies purging fluids until they are nothing but hollowed-out husks. You have seen fevers that burn so hot the skin feels like parchment left in the sun. You look at the murky depth of the bucket and wonder if today is the day your luck runs out. Is there a dead rat floating at the bottom of the well shaft? Unseen. Poisoning the supply. Has the neighbor's latrine finally leached through the clay wall? There is no way to know. There is no filter, no chemical tablet, no boiling kettle ready at hand. Fuel is expensive and gathering wood takes time and energy you don't have. So boiling every drop of water you use is a luxury? Not a standard practice. You take a sip, straining the grit through your teeth. The water is shockingly cold, which masks some of the taste, but the aftertaste is earthy and flat. It coats your tongue with a film of minerals and organic matter. You wipe your mouth with the back of your rough wool sleeve and prepare for the return journey. You lift the heavy bucket, the wire or rope handle digging deeply into the calloused flesh of your palm. The weight pulls your shoulder down, throwing your gait off balance. As you step away from the well, the water sloshes violently, splashing over the rim and soaking into your stockings. The cold liquid seeps through the fabric instantly, chilling your ankle and foot. The walk back to your hut is a study in endurance. Every step must be measured. If you walk too fast, you spill the precious cargo you just spent 10 minutes hauling. If you walk too slow, the strain on your arm becomes unbearable. You navigate the narrow alleyways, trying to avoid the deepest mud puddles while burdened by the dead weight at your side. Your fingers begin to cramp, freezing into a claw around the handle. You have to stop twice to switch hands. Setting the bucket down in the filth of the street, hoping no mud splashes into the water you plan to cook with. Other villagers pass you, their heads down, carrying their own buckets or bundles of firewood. There is no cheerful greeting, no morning pleasantries. Everyone is engaged in the same grim calculus of energy conservation. A nod is all you can afford. You are all bound by the same thirst, tethered to the same tainted hole in the ground. By the time you reach the heavy wooden door of your hut, your arm is trembling. You kick the door open, the hinges screaming in protest, and haul the bucket inside, setting it down on the packed earth floor with a heavy thud. You look at the water again. In the darkness of the hut, it looks almost black. This is the foundation of your day. This bucket of questionable fluid is the only thing standing between you and dehydration. It is what you will mix with the flour to make your bread. It is what will loosen the grime from your face. It is life, and it is sickness, all swirling together in a wooden pail. You shake out your numb hand, trying to get the blood flowing again. The cold dampness of the bucket handle lingers on your skin, a phantom sensation of the wet. Heavy load, but there is no time to rest your aching shoulders. The water was just the prerequisite. Now you must turn your attention to the solid fuel that will keep you moving through the grueling labor ahead. Your stomach gives a low, empty growl, reminding you that liquid is not enough. You turn your eyes to the table where a cloth covers the remains of yesterday's baking. It is time to eat, though the prospect offers very little comfort. You move toward the food, the taste of the gritty well water still lingering at the back of your throat, preparing yourself for the daily battle of chewing, with the metallic tang of the well water fading only slightly, replaced by the lingering residue of river silt on your tongue. You turn your attention to the centerpiece of your morning existence. It sits there on the rough-hewn planks of the table, dark and imposing, a silent monolith of sustenance that demands effort before it offers any reward. This is your breakfast. This is the bread, in your time, in the distant future you have left behind. Bread is a thing of air and softness. It is white, fluffy, packaged in plastic, and dissolves on the tongue with a hint of sweetness. It is a comfort food, something light to hold butter or jam. But here, in the dim, smoky light of the morning, the object before you bears little resemblance to those clouds of yeast and refined flour. This is a dense, formidable disk of rye and barley, a dark brown cob that looks more like a rounded river stone than a baked good. It is heavy, surprisingly so, as if the gravity in this era pulls harder on the dough than it does in the modern world. You reach out and place a hand on the loaf. It is cold. There is no warmth of the oven here, no smell of fresh baking that might trigger a salivary response or a feeling of home. In the peasant's life, baking is not a daily luxury. Fuel is expensive, and wood is time-consuming to gather. You do not light a fire just to bake a single loaf. Instead, the village shares a communal oven, or the lord demands a fee for the use of his. And so bread is baked in great batches, once a week if you are lucky, sometimes less often. The loaf under your hand might be 3 days old. It might be 10. It has settled into a state of rigor mortis, a hardness that serves to preserve it against the damp, but also turns it into a test of human endurance. You do not slice this bread. To attempt to slice it with the dull iron knife at your belt would be a fool's errand, likely resulting in the blade skittering off the crust and into your palm. Instead, you have to break it. You dig your fingers into the coarse, flour-dusted surface, feeling the resistance. It doesn't yield easily. You have to put your shoulders into it, bracing your elbows, twisting the loaf until the crust finally gives way with a sound less like the tearing of food and more like the snapping of dry wood. A chunk comes free in your hand. It is rough and jagged. The interior is not an airy lattice of bubbles. It is a tight, gray-brown packing of grain, dense and damp. You bring the piece to your nose. It smells sour. There is the scent of the rye. Yes, but also the sharp, fermented tang of the sourdough starter that has been kept alive in a dirty crock for generations. It smells of smoke, of the earth, and faintly of the mold that you carefully scraped off the crust before sitting down. You take a bite. This is the moment where the reality of medieval survival becomes a physical sensation in your skull. You do not simply chew this bread, you go to war with it. The crust is thick and leathery, requiring you to gnaw and tear just to get a manageable piece into your mouth. Once it is there, the real work begins. Your jaw muscles tighten. engaging in a repetitive, grinding rhythm that will become the background tempo of your entire life. Chew, grind, chew, grind. It is dry, sucking the moisture from your mouth instantly. You reach for the cup of water again, taking a sip just to create enough paste to swallow. But as your teeth meet through the dense mash of rye, you feel the distinct, unnerving crunch of something that is definitely not grain. Grit! It is a sensation that sends a shiver down your spine. A sharp, sudden vibration that rattles through your jawbone and into your ears. It sounds like someone walking on gravel, but the sound is coming from inside your own head. This is the signature of medieval bread, the invisible ingredient that no recipe calls for but every loaf contains. You see, the flour for this bread was ground between two massive stones at the village mill. These stones, weighing thousands of pounds, spin and rub against each other for hours on end, day after day, year after year. As they pulverize the grain, the friction inevitably pulverizes the stone itself. Tiny fragments of rock, dust from the millstone, and grit from the sand used to dress the stones all mix inextricably with the flour. There is no sifting process refined enough to remove it all. The rich might afford fine bolting cloths to filter their white manchet bread, reducing the grit to a minimum. But you are eating the dark bread, the maslin loaf. You are eating the whole grain, the husk, and the stone that crushed it. And so, you chew. You can feel the sand grinding against the enamel of your teeth. It is a slow, abrasive process, like sandpaper working on wood. You might wonder, looking around at the few older folks in the village, why their smiles are gaps of brown rot, or why their remaining teeth are worn down to flat. Smooth stumps level with the gum line. It isn't sugar that destroys the medieval smile. Sugar is a rare spice for the ultra-wealthy. A myth to people like you? No, it is the bread. The staff of life is also the great destroyer of the mouth. Every meal is a microscopic act of erosion, filing your teeth down, millimeter by millimeter, year after year. The fear of biting down too hard is always present in the back of your mind. If you clamp your jaw shut on a particularly large pebble hidden in the dough, you risk cracking a tooth. In a world without dentists, where the solution to a toothache is a pair of blacksmith's pliers and a shot of bad liquor, a cracked tooth is the beginning of a long, agonizing slide into infection and fever. So you chew carefully, you chew deliberately, you navigate the landscape of your breakfast with paranoid caution. The flavor is monotonous. It is earthy and heavy, sitting in your mouth like a lump of clay. There is no butter to spread on it. Butter is a commodity to be sold or saved for the winter. There is no cheese this morning. The cheese is curing. There is only the bread, the grit, and the water. Your jaw begins to ache with the exertion. The muscles in your temples throb. It takes a long time to eat enough to feel full. The bread expands in your stomach, sitting there like a lead weight. It is fuel, raw and inefficient. It is meant to burn slowly, to power you through 12 hours of back-breaking labor in the fields. But right now, it feels less like nourishment and more like a burden you have voluntarily swallowed. You look down at the remaining half of the chunk in your hand. The gray crumbs are scattered across the scarred wood of the table. A small black beetle scuttles out of a crevice in the crust, confused by the sudden disturbance of its home. You flick it away without a second thought. Insects are just protein or nuisances, and you are too tired to care about sharing your breakfast. You force yourself to finish. You tear off another piece of the leather-hard crust. Dip it into the water to soften it slightly, a technique that makes it soggy but saves your gums and put it in your mouth. The sour taste is overwhelming now, a reminder of the fermentation that is barely controlled. You swallow the lump, feeling it slide slowly, heavily down your throat. This act of eating, so simple and automatic in your previous life, is here a somber ritual of survival. It is devoid of joy. It is purely functional, a maintenance task for the biological machine that is your body. You are filling the furnace. You are loading the cargo. You are preparing to be used. As the last of the grit scrapes against your molars and the heavy mass settles into the pit of your stomach, you push back from the table. The wooden stool scrapes loudly against the packed earth floor, a sound that seems too loud in the quiet gloom of the hut. You run your tongue over your teeth, checking instinctively for chips, feeling the rough film of flour that coats your mouth. You are fed, you are heavy, you are alive, but the reprieve is over. The gray light filtering through the cracks in the door has shifted. The sun is fully up, though it offers no warmth to the damp air of the cottage. The silence of the meal is broken by the distant, rhythmic sound of iron striking earth, of voices calling out to oxen. The village is moving. The land is waiting. You stand up, your knees popping in the cold, the weight of the stone-hard bread anchoring you to the earth. You turn toward the door, knowing that the energy you have just painfully consumed will be drained from you long before the sun reaches its zenith. The fields are endless, and they do not care about your aching jaw or your heavy stomach. The bread, sitting heavy and jagged in your stomach, provides a sensation less like nourishment and more like you've swallowed a fistful of wet gravel. It is a dense, unsettling weight that anchors you to the earth as you step away from the meager shelter of your hut and trudge toward the outskirts of the village. The village itself is small, a cluster of sad, brown structures huddling together against the biting wind. But the land you are walking toward is vast. It stretches out in every direction, a patchwork quilt of browns and grays that seems to swallow the horizon. This is your world. This is your office, your factory, and your prison. It is the open field. You might have a romanticized image in your head of medieval farming. Perhaps you picture a golden afternoon, soft light filtering through the leaves, a happy peasant tossing seeds with a gentle, rhythmic motion while birds sing in the hedgerows. You need to purge that image from your mind immediately. That is a painting hanging in a museum with climate control. This is reality. And the reality is that the earth is not a gentle mother. It is a stubborn, frozen opponent that you must wrestle into submission, inch by agonizing inch. As you reach the edge of the arable land, the wind picks up, whistling across the flat. Exposed terrain. There are no trees here to break the gust. The forests were cleared generations ago to make room for these strips of land. And now there is nothing to stop the chill from cutting right through your coarse wool tunic. You can feel the cold seeping into your bones, stiffening the joints that are already aching from yesterday's labor, and the day before that, and every day since you were old enough to walk. You stop to pick up your tool. Maybe it's a mattock, maybe a heavy wooden spade tipped with a pathetic strip of low-quality iron. As your hand wraps around the haft, you feel the familiar bite of the wood. The handle is polished smooth in places by the sweat and oil of your own skin. But in others, it remains rough and splintery. It is thick, heavy, and unbalanced. There is no ergonomic design here. There is no shock absorption. There is only a stick and a heavy blade. And the conduit between the tool and the dirt is your body. You look out at the furrow. It looks impossibly long. In the medieval open field system, land isn't divided into neat, square little family plots. It is divided into long, narrow strips furlongs. A furrow long. The distance an ox team can plow before needing to rest. You don't have an ox team today. Today, you are the ox. You step into the mud. Immediately, the suction grabs your boot. This isn't just surface mud. This is deep, cloying clay. It is heavy and wet. clinging to your leather footwear like a desperate child. Every step requires a conscious effort to lift your foot, shake off the accumulation of muck, and plant it down again. Squelch. Suck. Step. The sound is rhythmically depressing. You drive the spade into the earth. The ground is hard, packed tight by the frost of the night. You have to jump on the rim of the blade, driving it down with your full body weight, sending a shockwave of impact up your shins and into your knees. You lever the handle back. The wet earth groans as it tears apart, revealing the dark, worm-ridden soil beneath. You lift the clod, it weighs 10 pounds. Easily and turn it over. That was one. You have thousands to go. The sun begins to crest the horizon, bleeding a pale, watery light across the landscape. It offers absolutely no warmth. If anything, the light just serves to illuminate the sheer scale of the task ahead of you. You can see the other villagers now, scattered across the vast fields like tiny, insignificant specks. They are silent, heads down, mirroring your movements. Dig. Lift. Turn. Dig. Lift. Turn. There is no conversation. Talk wastes breath, and you need every ounce of air to keep your blood oxygenated enough to prevent you from passing out. The only sounds are the wind, the sucking mud, the grunt of exertion, and the occasional sharp clink of metal hitting a hidden stone. Let's talk about that soil for a moment. It smells ancient. It smells of rot, of manure, of damp decay. It is the smell of things dying to feed things that haven't grown yet. As you work, the sweat begins to break on your forehead. Despite the freezing air, it trickles down your temples, stinging your eyes with salt, but you can't wipe it away because your hands are caked in filth. If you touch your face, you risk rubbing grit into your eyes or smearing manure near your mouth. So you let it drip. You let it itch. Your hands are the first to complain. Even though they are calloused, hardened into protective, leathery pads by years of this abuse, the friction is relentless. The handle rubs against the meat of your thumb, back and forth, thousands of times an hour. You can feel a hot spot forming a blister rising deep under the callus. It's a dull, throbbing heat that warns you of the inevitable pop and the sting that will follow. But you cannot stop. To stop is to starve. You might think that you are working for yourself, growing the food that will fill your belly next winter, and in a very small way, you are. But mostly, you are working for someone else. You are working for the Lord of the Manor. You are working for the church. You owe them days of labor week work where you must neglect your own meager strips of land to toil on the Lord's domain. You are burning your calories, wearing down your joints, and blistering your skin to grow wheat that you will likely never taste. Destined for the high table in the stone, keep on the hill, where the fire is always warm and the wine is always poured. The injustice of it doesn't even make you angry anymore. It just makes you tired. It is a heavy, spiritual exhaustion that matches the physical weight of the spade. Hours pass. The sun creeps higher, indifferent to your suffering. The muscles in your lower back begin to scream. It starts as a tightness, then a throb, and finally a sharp, stabbing protest with every lift of the soil. This is the peasant stoop in the making. Your spine is being slowly compressed, ground down by the relentless gravity of the field. You try to stand up straight to stretch, but your vertebrae feel fused together. You hear a sickening crack, and the relief is only momentary before you have to bend again. Your shoulders burn with lactic acid. Your forearms feel like they are turning into lead. The repetitive motion is hypnotic in the worst possible way. You enter a trance state, a gray fog where time loses its meaning. You aren't a person anymore. You are a machine made of meat and bone, designed solely to turn the top 12 inches of the earth upside down. Hunger returns, gnawing at you. The stone-hard bread is long gone, burned up by the furnace of your metabolism. Your blood sugar drops, making your vision swim slightly at the edges. The world tilts. You stumble, your boot catching on a hidden root. You catch yourself, but the adrenaline spike leaves you shaky. You look at your hands. They are trembling, not from cold, but from weakness. The dirt worked into the knuckles makes them look like the roots you are digging up, gnarled, brown, and raw. The blister on your thumb has finally burst, the raw skin rubbing against the rough wood of the handle with every motion. It stings, sharp and bright, a constant reminder of your frailty. But the field doesn't care. The field stretches on, hundreds of yards of gray-brown emptiness waiting for you. You focus on the ground. Just one more row. Just one more step. The monotony dulls your senses. You stop paying attention to where you place your feet. You stop paying attention to the angle of the blade. You are just swinging and stepping. Swinging and stepping. Your mind drifting away to a place where you are warm and full. This is dangerous. In the modern world, losing focus at work might mean a typo in an email. Here, losing focus is life-threatening. Your fatigue makes you clumsy. Your grip on the handle loosens just a fraction. You swing the heavy tool down, aiming for a clump of weeds, but your exhausted muscles betray you. The angle is wrong. The blade glances off a hidden rock, sparking against the flint, and skitters sideways with terrifying speed. It happens in a heartbeat. The rusted, dirt-encrusted metal edge of the tool, sharp enough to cut roots, swings wildly toward your shin. You are too tired to react, too slow to pull your leg out of the mud. You watch it happen as if from a distance. The inevitability of the metal meeting your flesh. The dull thud of impact is followed instantly by a searing, white-hot line of pain that cuts through the cold and the exhaustion, waking you up from your trance into a nightmare of immediate, sharp clarity. You drop the tool, it lands in the mud with a wet, heavy slap that seems muffled by the ringing in your ears. For a second, you don't even look at your hand. You just stand there, breath huffing out in white clouds against the gray sky, clutching your wrist with your other hand, feeling the pressure before you feel the stinging reality of what has just happened. When you finally summon the courage to look, the sight is dishearteningly grime-streaked. The jagged edge of the hoe, or perhaps the rusted bite of the sickle, has opened a gash across your palm or your forearm. In the modern world, that distant fever dream of a future you vaguely remember, this would be an annoyance. It would be a moment of frustration. A reach for the first aid kit, a splash of antiseptic, and a sterile adhesive bandage. You would check your tetanus shot record, maybe complain about the sting, and then forget about it entirely within an hour. But here, standing ankle-deep in the chilly muck of the medieval field, staring at the bright red blood beginning to well up and mix with the layer of crusted soil on your skin, you are not annoyed. You are terrified. You watch the blood bead and run, cutting a dark path through the dirt on your arm, dripping down to your elbow. The panic that sets in is a cold, churning sensation in your gut, far heavier than the throb in your flesh. You know, with a grim and absolute certainty, that this simple slip of the hand could very well be the end of you. You look at the tool lying in the dirt. The iron is pitted and scarred, covered in a flaky, orange-brown rust that looks like a disease in itself. It has been used to turn soil mixed with animal manure, rotting vegetation, and the waste of the village for years. It is not clean. Nothing here is clean. And now, that filth has been driven deep inside your body, past the protective barrier of your skin, introducing a legion of invisible enemies that you have no name for, but whose effects you know intimately. You have seen what happens to others. You have seen a neighbor prick their finger on a thorn and be dead within the week, raving with fever as their arm turned the color of an angry plum. You have seen strong men brought low by a blister that went bad, their strength sapped by a heat that radiated from a wound no larger than a coin. Here, infection is not a possibility. It is a predator waiting in the margins of every day. And you have just rung the dinner bell. You squeeze your eyes shut, trying to steady your breathing. You need to stop the bleeding, but with what you look down at your clothes, your tunic is stiff with sweat and old dirt. Your breeches are splattered with the mud of the sty. You have no sterile gauze. You have no antibacterial ointment. You have only the rags on your back, which are arguably dirtier than the ground you are standing on. Reluctantly, you let go of your wrist to inspect the damage more closely. The air hits the open wound, a sharp, biting sting that makes your fingers twitch involuntarily. The blood is flowing freely now, washing away some of the surface grit, which is perhaps the only small mercy you will be granted. You fumble at the hem of your tunic, finding a spot that looks slightly less stained than the rest, and you rip a strip of the coarse wool away. The sound of tearing fabric is loud in the quiet field. You wrap the rough, scratchy wool around the cut. It's not soft. It chafes against the raw edges of your skin, the friction sending fresh spikes of pain up your arm. You tie it tight, hoping the pressure will stem the flow, watching as the dark stain begins to blossom through the fabric almost immediately. Now begins the waiting game. As you pick the tool back up because you must pick it back up, the Lord's quota does not care about your injury. Your mind begins to spiral into the medical realities of your time. You find yourself wishing for a doctor, but then you remember what a doctor entails in this era. If the wound begins to fester, if the red streaks start to climb up your arm like the roots of a poisonous plant, who will you call? The village barber surgeon. A man whose primary qualification is that he owns a sharp knife and strong forearms. If you go to him, he might decide that the bad blood needs to be let out. He might slice you open further to balance your humors, draining your vitality into a pewter bowl while nodding sagely about the position of Mars or the excess of yellow bile in your system. Or perhaps you will turn to the village wise woman, who might plaster the wound with a poultice made of moldy bread, spider webs, and crushed garlic. Ironically, the mold might have trace amounts of penicillin, but it's a gamble. A roll of the dice where the stake is your limb or your life. You've heard of treatments involving the urine of a calf, or ointments made from boiled earthworms. The cure here is often just as terrifying as the ailment. You grip the handle of the tool again. The rough wood presses into your bandage, the pressure sending a dull, rhythmic throb through your hand that matches the beating of your heart. Thump throb. Thump throb. It is a distraction you cannot afford, yet cannot ignore. Every time you swing the tool now, you feel the skin pulling. You imagine the rust particles in the soil moving deeper into your flesh. You are hyper-aware of the dirt on your other hand, the dirt on the handle, the dirt in the air. You realize that you live in a world of biology completely unchecked by science. There is no barrier between you and the microscopic world. You are simply a vessel waiting to be colonized. You try to distract yourself by focusing on the work. But the pain is a persistent, nagging companion. It's not the sharp agony of the initial cut anymore. It's a hot, tight sensation, a feeling of inflammation beginning to take hold. You wonder if the heat you feel is just the friction of the bandage or the start of the fire, the fever that consumes. This dread is a heavy cloak. It makes the sky seem grayer, the field more endless. You look at the horizon, where the tree line meets the overcast sky, and you feel a profound sense of vulnerability. In the future, you are the master of your environment. You have paved over the earth, sanitized your water, and waged war on bacteria with chemical weapons. But here, you are small. You are soft biological matter in a world of hard edges and rot. You think about the night to come. You will have to sleep with this throbbing wound. You will have to keep it away from the straw you sleep on, which is infested with mites. You will have to keep it away from the rats that scurry in the dark. You will have to change the bandage, but you have no clean water to wash the wound, with only the water from the communal well, which you know sits stagnant and murky. To wash the wound might introduce something worse than what is already there. So, you will likely do nothing. You will leave the dirty rag on, letting the blood crust over and seal the fabric to your skin, creating a hard, painful shell. You will pray to whatever saints listen to field hands that your body is strong enough to fight off the invasion on its own. You will watch for the swelling. You will sniff the bandage for the smell of decay. The afternoon drags on, measured out in the painful pulses of your injured hand. The adrenaline has faded, leaving you with just the exhaustion and the fear. The rhythm of your labor changes to accommodate the injury. You favor the arm, moving awkwardly, which makes your back ache and your shoulders burn. You are a broken cog in a machine that does not stop for repairs. You pause for a moment to wipe the sweat from your forehead. Careful to use the back of your uninjured hand. The air has grown still, the wind dying down as if the world is holding its breath. The usual scents of the field, the damp earth, the drying manure are suddenly overpowered by something new. It is a thick, cloying heaviness in the air that seems to coat the back of your throat. It is not the metallic tang of your own blood, nor the earthy smell of the soil. It is something far more pungent, a dense, organic wall of odor that drifts toward you on the shifting breeze. It is a smell that promises a different kind of horror, a reminder that while the fields are lonely, the town and its industry is never far away. The wind has turned, coming now from the direction of the river, bringing with it the atmosphere of the workshops that line the banks. You turn your head, your nostrils flaring against the assault, momentarily forgetting the throb in your hand, as your senses are hijacked by a new, overwhelming disgust. The pain in your palm is sharp. Yes, but the stench rolling in now is dull, heavy, and suffocating. It is the smell of death, but not the clean death of a battlefield. It is the slow, chemically treated death of commerce. You brace yourself, lowering the tool as the invisible cloud washes over you, carrying the story of hides, urine, and rot. The quiet dread of your injury is about to be replaced by the sheer, visceral revulsion of the tanner's trade. The wind is a traitor here. For a moment, as you stand in the furrowed mud of the field, holding your breath against the pain of your hand and the ache in your back. The air is still, but then the breeze shifts. It turns, coming not from the open woods or the high hills, but rolling down from the cluster of sheds near the riverbank. It hits you with physical force, a heavy, invisible blanket that seems to instantly coat the inside of your nose and the back of your throat. It is the tanner's pit. If you thought the smoky air of your hut was suffocating, or the livestock you sleep with were pungent, they are nothing compared to the industrial brutality of the tannery. You can taste it before you even see it. It is a cloying, sweet, metallic rot that clings to the roof of your mouth. It is the smell of death, but death that has been interrupted, paused, and chemically altered into something useful. You have to pass it. The path back toward the village center, toward the only place where you might find a salve or a moment of respite, winds uncomfortably close to the workshops. You lower your head, pulling the scratchy wool of your tunic up over your nose, burying your face in the crook of your elbow. It does nothing. The stench is too powerful. It permeates the wool. It permeates your skin. It is an atmospheric fact, as inescapable as the gravity holding you to the mud. As you draw closer, the source of the horror becomes clear. It isn't just one smell, but a complex, layered symphony of foulness. The first note is the urine. It is sharp, stinging your eyes, making them water instantly. In this world, nothing is wasted. Absolutely nothing. The chamber pots of the village, the liquid waste of the morning, is collected with a meticulous, grim efficiency. It is brought here to the tanner to be fermented. You see the large wooden vats, dark and stained, sunk partially into the sodden earth. They are filled with a yellow-brown liquor that bubbles sluggishly in the cold air. The tanners, men with skin the color of old walnuts and hands that look like gnarled roots, use this stale and fermented wash to loosen the hair from the hides. The ammonia burns the air. It clears your sinuses in the most violent way possible, searing the delicate membranes until all you can smell, all you can think about, is the acrid bite of old waste. But underneath the sharp sting of ammonia is something heavier, something darker. It is the smell of the dung, to soften the leather, to make it pliable enough for a jerkin or a boot. The hides must be soaked in a mixture of water and dog feces. This is the reality of the fine leather goods you might see in a fantasy movie. Before the hero straps on his armor, before the king sits in his saddle, that leather spent weeks steeping in a soup of excrement. You watch as a tanner leans over a pit, his face a mask of weary indifference. He plunges a long wooden pole into the slurry, churning the hides. The sound is a wet, sucking squelch. Thwack, 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 as the heavy, waterlogged skins slap against each other in the muck. He doesn't gag. He doesn't even blink. He has breathed this air for so long that his lungs have likely calloused over, accepting the miasma as normal oxygen. And then there is the flesh. The raw, organic undertone that ties it all together. Before the tanning can even begin, the animal skins must be scraped clean. You see the fleshing beams, smooth logs set at an angle, embedding where fresh hides are draped. A boy, no older than 12 but looking 40 in the eyes, drags a dull knife down the length of a cowhide. He is scraping away the fat, the meat, the membrane, the parts of the animal that want to rot. He scrapes, and he scrapes, and he scrapes. The rhythm is hypnotic and terrible. The wet slide of the knife, the plop of fatty tissue hitting the muddy ground. The pile of discarded flesh grows at his feet, buzzing with the only creatures that seem to enjoy this place, the flies. Even in the chill of the morning, great clouds of iridescent black flies hover over the pits. A humming, shifting black carpet. They land on the boy's arms, on his face, but he cannot swat them away. His hands are covered in grease and gore. He just shakes his head, a twitching motion, and keeps scraping. You might wonder why anyone would tolerate this. Why the village doesn't rise up and burn these sheds to the ground just to clear the air. But you know the answer. Look at your feet. Look at the thin, cracking leather of your boots. Look at the belt holding your tunic. Look at the harness on the ox in the field. Leather is the plastic of your world. It is the essential material. Without it, you have no shoes to protect you from the hookworm in the mud. You have no straps to carry your tools. You have no buckets that don't rot. So, the tanner is necessary. He is the alchemist of refuse, turning death and waste into durability. But that necessity doesn't make the air any easier to breathe. As you walk along the edge of the works, the ground changes. It is no longer just mud. It is a slick, multicolored sludge. The runoff from the pits, the lime, the urine, the tannins from oak bark, the liquefied fat oozes out toward the stream. The water here is stained a bruised purple-black. You know better than to let your skin touch it. You certainly know never to drink from the river downstream of the tanner. It is a poisoned vein running through the countryside, carrying the sins of the trade away to the next village. The wind gusts again, stronger this time, and you almost gag. The smell is so thick it feels greasy on your skin. You feel as though if you stayed here too long, you would begin to tan yourself, your skin turning into stiff, unyielding leather. It is an oppressive, silent weight. There's no laughter here, no chatter, just the sound of water dripping, the squelch of the pits, and the endless scraping of the knives. You try to breathe through your mouth, hoping to bypass the worst of it, but the taste is inescapable. It tastes like copper and rot. It tastes like the back of a throat infection. You pull your collar tighter, walking faster now, your boots slipping on the greasy path. You want to run, but the muck won't let you. You are forced to trudge, step by heavy step, through the invisible cloud. It is a reminder of the cycle of this life. The animal dies. It is skinned, the waste is gathered, the leather is made, and you wear it until it rots off your feet, only to be replaced by another dead thing treated in a pit of filth. There is no sterility here. There is no gleaming white laboratory. There is only the pit. Finally, the path begins to curve away. The sheds recede into the gray mist behind you. The air, while still smelling of smoke and unwashed bodies, begins to lose that sharp, ammonic bite. You take a shallow breath, testing the atmosphere. The stinging in your eyes begins to fade, leaving them red and sore. You rub them with your dirty knuckles, leaving a streak of soot across your cheek. You have escaped the tanner's immediate orbit, but the smell hasn't left you entirely. It clings to your hair. It has seeped into the fabric of your tunic. You suspect that later, when you lie down to sleep, you will catch a drift of it from your own shoulder, a ghost of the pits following you into your dreams. But for now, the immediate assault is over. You are moving toward the center of the village, the heartbeat of this small, muddy world. The sounds of the tannery, the wet thuds and the buzzing flies fade, replaced by the low murmur of people. But the relief you feel is short-lived. The village square is not a place of leisure. It is a place of judgment. As the fog of the tanner's scent lifts, your vision clears, and you see the gathering ahead. The wooden structures rise up from the cobblestones, worn smooth by generations of use. You keep your head down, trying to blend into the background, but you cannot help but look. You are drawn to it, just like everyone else. The spectacle of public shame. You step away from the chemical horror of the leather pits and into the social horror of the town square. The air here is clearer. Yes, but the atmosphere is heavy with a different kind of tension. You hear the jeering before you see the victim. You hear the dull thud of something soft hitting wood. You are approaching the stocks. And in this world, justice is not blind. It is a spectator sport. The noise hits you first. A dissonant, jagged rumble that cuts through the steady, depressing hum of the village workday. You hear the jeering before you see the victim. You hear the dull thud of something soft hitting wood. You are approaching the stocks. And in this world, justice is not blind. It is a spectator sport. You tighten your grip on the rough strap of your bag and lower your head, but you cannot close your ears. The sound is distinct. It is the sound of collective relief. The people shouting, laughing, and hurling abuse are relieved because, for today at least, they are on the outside of the heavy wooden beams. In a life defined by uncertainty, where a bad harvest means starvation and a cough means death, there is a dark, tribal comfort in seeing someone else suffer the bad luck. You round the corner of the wattle and daub church, the mud sucking at your boots with a wet, sloppy sound, and the town square opens up before you. It isn't much of a square, and really, it's just a patch of beaten earth where the grass has long since given up the ghost, trampled into submission by the boots of peasants and the hooves of loose livestock. And there, in the center, raised slightly on a wooden platform that has absorbed the rain and rot of 100 seasons, stands the instrument of correction. The stocks, they are primitive, brutish things. 2 heavy slabs of oak, gray and splintered from years of exposure to the biting wind and the summer sun. The wood is stained dark, a visual record of the filth and misery of previous occupants. The top plank is hinged, lifted just enough to entrap the ankles and sometimes the wrists of the condemned, before being slammed down and locked with a rusty iron hasp that looks as thick as your thumb. Today, the unfortunate soul locked in this rigid embrace is a man you recognize vaguely. He lives 3 huts down from the river. A potter? Perhaps? Or a weaver? It doesn't matter much now. In the eyes of the village, he has ceased to be a neighbor and has become a vessel for their frustrations. He sits on the damp wood of the platform, his legs extended straight out, locked tight in the oak grasp. You pause for a moment, keeping to the edge of the crowd. You can feel the atmosphere. It isn't filled with the rage of a riot, but rather a dull, cruel boredom. This is the medieval cinema. This is the evening news. You notice the smell immediately. It wafts over the crowd, distinct from the usual background odor of wood smoke and unwashed bodies. It is the smell of decay. You see, the popular image of the prisoner in the stocks being pelted with fresh tomatoes is a lie invented by people who have never known hunger. In the Middle Ages, no one throws good food. Food is life. Food is money. To throw a fresh vegetable would be madness. Instead, they throw the refuse. The crowd is armed with the garbage of the market. You watch as a sodden, black cabbage stalk arcs through the gray air. It spins slowly, heavy with rot, and lands with a wet slap against the prisoner's shoulder. He flinches, a reflex that goes nowhere, his body jerking against the unforgiving wood. Sludge from the gutter, handfuls of horse manure, the entrails of a fish that stayed too long on the monger's slab. This is the ammunition of public shame. The poor man is covered in it. A slurry of filth drips from his hair, running down his forehead and into his eyes. And this, you realize, is the true torture of the stocks. It isn't just the cramps in the legs or the hardness of the seat. It is the helplessness. If a fly lands on his nose and he cannot swat it, if the juice of a rotten turnip runs into his eye, stinging and blurring his vision like he cannot wipe it away, he is forced to sit, frozen, while the world deposits its filth upon him. You might wonder what he did to deserve this. Did he steal a horse? Did he burn down a barn? Unlikely. For those crimes, he would be swinging from a rope or losing a hand. The stocks are reserved for the petty annoyances of village life, the regulatory infractions that keep the local lord's coin purse heavy. Perhaps he was a baker who was caught selling a loaf of bread that was slightly lighter than the law demands, breaking the assize of bread and ale. Perhaps he was a brewer who watered down the beer. Or maybe he simply said the wrong thing to the wrong bailiff, drunk on ale and frustration. In this era, there is no defense attorney, no plea bargain, no appeals court. There is only the word of the powerful against the word of the weak. And the result is a day spent locked in wood while your neighbors throw mud at you. You watch as a group of children, their faces smudged with soot, run up to the platform. They are laughing, treating the man like a carnival attraction. They poke at his boots with sticks, taunting him. The adults look on, arms crossed, judging. It creates a suffocating feeling in your chest. This enforced conformity. The message is clear to everyone watching. Step out of line. Break the social contract. Become a nuisance. And we will strip you of your dignity before the sun goes down. The wind picks up, swirling the dust of the square. It cuts through your thin tunic, reminding you that you are cold, but at least you are mobile. You look at the prisoner's hands. They are white-knuckled, gripping his own thighs, trying to find some purchase, some way to shift his weight. You can imagine the ache setting into his lower back, a dull, grinding pain that started an hour ago and will not cease until the bailiff comes with the key. His muscles must be screaming, cramping in the cold air. But there is no relief. He has to urinate, you are sure of it. But he is trapped. That final indignity is inevitable, and the crowd knows it. They are waiting for it. It creates a strange, heavy feeling in the pit of your stomach, a mixture of pity and a selfish, primal instinct to distance yourself. You don't want to be associated with him. You don't want to catch the eye of the bailiff standing guard, looking bored and leaning on a spear. If you show too much sympathy, you might be next. If you don't laugh loud enough, are you suspicious? So you avert your gaze. You look down at the muck around your boots. You pull your rough woolen cloak tighter around your shoulders, trying to make yourself small, trying to become just another gray shape in a gray world. You start to walk past, your steps heavy and sucking in the mud. The sounds of the square drift behind you, the mockery, the thud of refuse, the low murmur of gossip. You think about how easy it is to fall in this world. One mistake, one bad measurement, one moment of anger, and you are the entertainment. The sun is beginning its descent, casting long, warped shadows across the alleyways. The light is turning that peculiar, bruised purple of a winter twilight. The prisoner will likely be there until full dark, shivering as the temperature plummets, left alone with the rats and the stray dogs once the crowd loses interest and goes home to their fires. But you have to keep moving. You have your own survival to worry about. The spectacle of the stocks has served its purpose. You are sufficiently cowed, sufficiently grateful for your meager freedom, and sufficiently afraid of authority. You turn away from the square, leaving the poor wretch to his cold, wooden fate. Your stomach gives a hollow rumble, a painful reminder that the day is wearing on, and you haven't eaten since that gritty bread at dawn. The thought of food brings no pleasure, only a weary necessity. You are heading home, or what passes for home in this time a dark, smoky hut where the air is thick and the comfort is non-existent. You trudge forward, your mind already turning to the evening meal. You hope, with a pessimism born of experience, that it will be warm. But as the smell of the tanner's pit and the rotting vegetables fades behind you, a new scent begins to rise from the cooking fires of the village. It isn't an appetizing smell. It is bland, earthy, and dull. It is the smell of sustenance without joy. It is the smell of the gray pottage that awaits you. You step across the threshold, ducking your head instinctively to avoid the low, soot-stained beam of the doorframe. The transition from the biting wind of the twilight alley to the interior of your hovel is jarring. It isn't warm. Exactly, warmth implies a gentle, enveloping comfort that does not exist in your world, but the air here is thick, still, and heavy. It presses against you, laden with the collected humidity of breathing bodies, damp wool, and the dying embers of the central hearth. Your stomach gives a painful, hollow contraction. It has been hours since you fought with the stone-hard bread at midday. Hours filled with the mindless repetition of labor, and your body is screaming for fuel. But as you look toward the center of the room, there is no roast turning on a spit. There are no platters of capons or flagons of spiced wine. Those are the fantasies of future storytellers. Here, in the dim reality of the peasant's evening, there is only the cauldron. It hangs over the fire on a blackened iron hook. A heavy, rotund pot that seems to have absorbed the darkness of the room. The fire beneath it is meager, a collection of smoldering peat and precious few sticks that offer more smoke than flame. The contents of the pot do not bubble with a cheerful vigor. Instead, the surface of the liquid shifts sluggishly, occasionally releasing a thick, wet pop, as a bubble of steam fights its way through the viscosity of the mixture. This is your dinner. This is the pottage. You lower yourself onto a three-legged stool that wobbles on the uneven earth floor, your knees cracking as the weight comes off your feet. Someone hands you your bowl. It is a wooden vessel, turned from ash or maple, smooth from years of handling but stained dark by the endless succession of meals it has held. It feels greasy to the touch, a permanent film of animal fat and starch that cold water and sand can never quite scrub away. You hold the bowl out, and the ladle descends. It is a dull, wet sound as the pottage lands in your vessel. Plop? It doesn't splash. It mounds up. A gray-brown slurry that holds its shape for a moment before slowly slumping against the sides of the wood. You stare down at it. In the flickering, insufficient light of the dying fire, the color is impossible to determine, but you know it by heart. It is the color of wet clay. It is the color of the overcast sky. It is the color of boredom. You lift your spoon, also wood, perhaps with a chip in the rim that always catches your lip, and take the first mouthful. The texture is the first thing to assault you. It is neither solid nor liquid, but a confused, gritty suspension. The base is oats, boiled until they have lost all structural integrity, dissolved into a glue-like paste that coats the roof of your mouth. Suspended in this oat glue are the peas. These are not the sweet, green garden peas of a modern imagination. These are field peas, dried until they were hard as gravel, stored in a sack all winter, and then boiled for hours. Even after all that time in the pot, they retain a chalky, granular center that requires a weary, methodical chewing. And then there is the flavor, or rather, the profound lack of it. If you are lucky, truly lucky, there might be the faint, salty ghost of bacon in the mix. Not meat. Mind you, the meat was sold or eaten on a feast day long past, but perhaps the rind of a ham was tossed in to boil, or a spoonful of saved bacon grease was stirred into the gray mass. That grease is the most precious thing in the bowl, a slick of animal fat that promises calories, shimmering dully on the surface of the sludge. But mostly, it tastes of starch and earth. It tastes of the water drawn from the murky well. It tastes of the smoke that fills the room, an acrid seasoning that permeates everything you own, everything you wear, and everything you eat. You take another bite. Purely mechanical. You are not eating for pleasure, you are eating to stop the shaking in your hands. This pottage is a time capsule of your week. In the kitchens of the wealthy, meals are prepared fresh. In your world, the cauldron is rarely emptied. It is the perpetual stew. What you are eating tonight is the fresh handful of oats and cabbage thrown in this morning, mixed with the remnants of yesterday's bean mash, which is mixed with the dregs of the turnip broth from 2 days ago. The flavors do not meld into a complex symphony. They simply surrender into a flat, monotonous hum. The newer ingredients are undercooked. The older ingredients are disintegrated. You might find a stringy bit of vegetable matter that requires extra effort to gnaw through. A parsnip, perhaps grown woody with age, or a leaf of kale that has turned into a slimy, dark ribbon. You chew it dutifully. You swallow. You feel the heavy, warm lump travel down your throat and settle like a stone in your stomach. There are no spices here. Pepper, cinnamon, ginger. These are as distant to you as the stars. They cost more than your life is worth. Your only seasoning is what you can scrounge from the edges of the wild, a handful of wild garlic. Some mustard seed, perhaps some parsley if the frost hasn't killed it. But tonight, there was nothing to be found. Tonight, the pottage is naked. As you scrape the spoon against the bottom of the bowl, you can hear the scratching sound echo in the quiet hut. Your family is eating around you, and the silence is heavy. There is no dinner table conversation, no recounting of the day's events. The day's events were the same as yesterday's toil, mud, and cold. There is nothing to say. There is only the sound of chewing, the sound of swallowing, the sound of wooden spoons hitting wooden bowls. It is a hypnotic, dull rhythm. Scoop, lift, chew, swallow. The heat of the pottage is fleeting. Because fuel is expensive, the fire is kept low, just enough to simmer, never enough to truly boil vigorously. By the time the ladle hit your bowl, the pottage was already cooling. Now, halfway through the meal, a skin has formed on the surface a wrinkled, gelatinous film that you must break through with your spoon. The sludge beneath is tepid. It does not warm you from the inside as you had hoped. It merely fills the void. You might dream of bread to sop up the remains, but the good bread was sold. You might have a hunk of maslin bread, a dense mix of rye and wheat, but it is likely stale. So hard that you have to dunk it into the gray slop just to soften it enough to bite without shattering a tooth. You watch the dark bread absorb the gray liquid, swelling like a sponge, becoming a soggy, heavy sop that falls apart in your fingers. This is the fuel of the peasantry. It is dense, fibrous, and incredibly heavy on digestion. Within an hour, your stomach will feel distended, a bloated sensation that mimics fullness but brings with it a lethargic heaviness. The gas pains will start later, a common, silent companion to everyone in the hut. Born of a diet consisting almost entirely of fermented grains and roughage. You scrape the last smear of oats from the curve of the bowl, licking the wood to ensure not a single calorie is wasted. The rough grain of the wood tastes of old meals, of rancid fat and sour milk. A history of sustenance absorbed into the very fibers of your dishware. You set the bowl down. You are full, but you are not satisfied. The meal has served its purpose. It has kept death at bay for another 12 hours. It has provided just enough energy for your body to generate heat through the coming freezing night, and just enough strength for you to stand up when the sun rises to do it all over again. The fire's dying down now, the embers fading from a dull orange to a dusty gray, mirroring the contents of your stomach. The smoke thickens as the temperature in the hut begins to drop, the stone walls radiating the chill of the outside world. There is no after-dinner leisure. Candles are for the church and the manor. You cannot afford to burn money just to see the dirt on your hands. The end of the meal signifies the end of the day. The pottage is eaten. The bowl is set aside. The darkness is no longer creeping at the edges of the room. It has arrived. Absolute and total. You wipe your mouth with the back of your hand, feeling the grit of the day still clinging to your skin. The taste of the stale peas lingers on your tongue, a bland, earthy memory that will stay with you as you prepare to face the next trial. The light is gone. The safety of the visual world is vanishing, and as the shadows merge into a single, impenetrable blackness, the comfort of the full belly is replaced by a rising, primal unease. The sun has set. The village is silent, and you are no longer the master of your surroundings. The transition is not gentle. In your modern life, you are accustomed to a slow, manufactured twilight. You have the soft hum of street lamps flickering to life, the ambient orange glow of a city that never truly sleeps, the comforting blue light of screens that push back the void. But here, in the year 1250, the departure of the sun is an event of absolute, final authority. The gray light that filtered through the heavy clouds during your meal of sludge didn't fade so much as it was extinguished, like a candle pinched between two wet fingers. Now, you are standing just outside the threshold of your hut, wiping the last of the grit from your teeth, and you are witnessing a darkness so profound, so thick, that it feels less like the absence of light and more like the presence of something solid, It presses against your eyes, and it is a physical weight, a heavy, suffocating wool blanket thrown over the entire world. You hold your hand up in front of your face, a few inches from your nose, and you see nothing. Not a vague outline, not a shadow, just the abyss. This is the medieval night. It is a terrifying, lawless ocean that has swallowed your village whole, and you are drowning in it. You take a hesitant step forward, your boots squelching in the invisible mud. You can't see the muck anymore, but you can smell it, the cooling, damp scent of churned earth and animal waste, rising up to meet the crisp night air. Without your vision, your other senses are forced into overdrive, frantically trying to map a world that has vanished. You hear the wind rattling the dry thatch of the roof above you, a sound like skeletal fingers scratching for purchase. You hear the distant, rhythmic creaking of a tree branch rubbing against another in the forest edge. A groan that sounds uncomfortably human. You feel a spike of adrenaline, that ancient, chemical alarm bell ringing in the base of your skull. You tell yourself it is foolish. You are a modern person, rational and educated. You know that monsters aren't real. You know that the darkness is just the rotation of the planet. But standing here, in the ink-black silence of the 13th century, logic begins to dissolve. The darkness here feels predatory. It feels like it is watching you. You realize, with a sudden shiver that has nothing to do with the cold, why your ancestors were so incredibly superstitious. When you cannot see what is 10 feet in front of you, the mind fills the void with its worst nightmares. Every rustle in the grass is a goblin. Every hoot of an owl is an omen of death. Every unexpected shifting of the wind is a spirit passing through the village lane. You are not just blind. You are vulnerable in a way you have never experienced before. And the dangers are not just in your mind. They are very, very real. Out there, beyond the flimsy wattle and daub walls of the village perimeter, the truce between man and nature has ended for the night. You hear it now, a sound that freezes the blood in your veins. It starts as a low, mournful rising note, carried on the wind from the tree line a mile away. Then another joins it. Then a chorus. Wolves. These aren't the shy, elusive creatures of modern nature documentaries. These are the apex predators of a world where forests still dominate the land. They are hungry. They are bold. And in the winter months, they are desperate. There is no glass in your windows to keep them out. There are no locking steel doors. There is only a bit of wood, a bit of mud, and the fire you hope hasn't died down. The howl cuts through the silence, a reminder that out here, you are not the top of the food chain. You are simply slow, soft prey that can't see in the dark. You realize you need to get back inside, and quickly. But moving is a treacherous affair. You slide your foot forward, testing the ground like a blind man. The village path, which was a navigable slurry during the day, is now an obstacle course of ankle-breaking ruts and hidden pools of filth. You stumble over a discarded tool, perhaps a hoe left out by a careless neighbor, and nearly pitch face first into the dirt. A curse dies on your lips. You stay quiet. You have to. Because wolves aren't the only things hunting in the dark. In the cities and larger towns, and even here on the outskirts, the night belongs to the lawless. There is no police force to call. There are no security cameras. If you were to scream, your neighbors would likely bar their doors tighter rather than come to your aid. To be outside after dark is not just foolish in many places, it is actually a crime. The concept of the curfew isn't just a rule for teenagers in your time. It comes from the French couvre-feu, meaning cover fire. It is the ringing of a bell that signals everyone to bank their hearths and stay indoors. If you were found wandering now, you would be branded a night walker. In the eyes of the medieval law, an honest man has no business under the stars. Only thieves, murderers, and spirits walk the night. If the village watch, if such a thing even exists here, found you, you wouldn't get a warning. You'd get a beating, or a spot in those stalks you passed earlier, so you freeze. Listening. Is that a footstep in the mud behind you? The snap of a twig, or just the settling of a house. The silence stretches out, heavy and oppressive. The air is growing colder by the second, the dampness seeping through your coarse wool tunic, finding the sweat on your skin and turning it to ice. The smell of wood smoke hangs low and stagnant, trapping the exhaust of the day close to the ground. It catches in your throat, making you want to cough, but you suppress it, unwilling to make a sound in this vast, listening quiet. You turn back toward the hut. The faint, almost imperceptible outline of the doorway is your only guide. There is no light spilling out from inside. Candles are a luxury for the rich, made of beeswax and burning clear. You, if you had a light at all, would have a rushlight, a piece of dried reed dipped in animal fat, or a tallow candle that stinks of rendering meat and sputters more than it shines. But you don't even have that. To burn a candle is to burn money. To burn a candle is to waste resources. So you navigate by memory and touch. Your hand finds the rough, splintering wood of the doorframe. The texture is familiar, grounding. You fumble for the latch, a simple piece of leather string or a wooden peg. Your fingers are stiff with cold, clumsy and numb. You struggle with it for a moment, panic rising in your chest as the howling in the distance grows slightly louder. Slightly closer. Finally. The latch gives. You push the heavy door open. It groans on its leather hinges, a sound that seems deafening in the stillness. You slip inside, pulling the door shut behind you with a sense of desperate finality. You drop the wooden bar into place. It feels flimsy, terrifyingly inadequate against the weight of the night outside. But it is all you have. Inside, the darkness is even more complete. If that is possible, it is a sealed box of blackness. But the air here is different. It is thick, warm, and pungent. The smell strikes you immediately, a dense, humid wall of odor. It smells of unwashed bodies, of stale smoke, of old straw. But overriding all of that is the heavy, musky scent of animals. Because you are not alone in here. The main room of the hut is not just a bedroom for you and your family. It is the barn. It is the stable. In this world, heat is the most precious commodity you possess, and you cannot afford to waste the body heat of your livestock. The cow, the goat, the few scraggly chickens, they are all in here with you. You stand with your back against the door, waiting for your eyes to adjust, but they never will. There is no light to adjust to. You have to move across the room to your sleeping area solely by the mental map you burned into your brain during the daylight hours. You take a step, shuffling your feet so you don't step on a sleeping child or a resting hen. The floor is uneven, packed earth that has been worn into divots by generations of feet. You hear the heavy, wet breathing of the cow in the corner. It shifts its weight, hooves clacking softly against a stone. The sound is strangely comforting. It is the sound of life in the void. You reach out, your hands swimming through the dark, until your fingers brush against the coarse texture of a woven sack. You have found the sleeping area. Well, there's no bed. Of course, just a raised area of dirt, piled high with straw and covered with rough woolen blankets that haven't been washed since they were woven. The exhaustion hits you then. It's a sudden, crushing wave. The adrenaline of the dark outside fades, leaving you with the heavy, aching reality of your body. Your back throbs from the day in the fields. Your hands burn from the friction of the hoe. Your stomach churns uneasily with the heavy bread and gray pottage. But the day is not quite over. Survival in the Middle Ages is a 24-hour job, and the night brings its own unique struggle. You aren't just going to sleep, you are going to battle against the cold, and to win, you have to get close to the only heat source available. You crawl onto the straw, the stalks poking through your leggings, scratching your skin. You can hear the rustle of others, your family already huddled there. But there is a warmer spot, a prime piece of real estate in the dark, and you move toward it instinctively. You are moving toward the goat. You stumble in the pitch blackness, your hands outstretched, fingers brushing against the rough, splintering timber of the support beams. You know the layout of this single room by heart, not because you can see it, but because you have memorized the geography of its filth. To your left is the hearth, now just a pile of cooling ash and a few embers that glow like dying eyes, offering no real warmth to the air that is rapidly turning into a freezer. To your right is the pallet where your children are already a tangle of limbs and ragged blankets. But you are not heading for the hearth. And you are not heading for the pallet. You are heading for the only reliable source of heat left in this world. You are moving toward the goat. You hear it before you find it, a low, rhythmic chewing sound, the grinding of teeth on cud, echoing in the quiet corner of the hut. The smell hits you next. It is distinct from the wood smoke and the stale sweat of your own clothes. It is a dense, musky wall of ammonia, wet hay, and animal grease. In the 21st century, this smell would make you retch, a pungent signal to call the health department or run for fresh air. Here, in the damp reality of the Middle Ages, that smell triggers a different Pavlovian response. It signals survival. It signals the only thing that stands between you and a hypothermic shivering fit that burns calories you cannot afford to lose. You drop to your knees in the straw. It is wetter here, closer to the animal pen, which, let's be honest, isn't really a pen. It is just the other side of the room. There is no drywall, no glass partition, perhaps only a shallow gutter dug into the dirt floor to catch the runoff of urine. A gutter that frequently overflows into the sleeping quarters. You crawl forward, the knees of your breeches soaking up the dampness of the earth, until your hand connects with coarse, oily hair. The goat shifts, letting out a soft, confused bleat, but it doesn't move away. It is used to this. You are part of its herd, and it is part of yours. You maneuver yourself into the cramped space, curling your body into a tight C shape to fit against the animal's flank. The straw here is matted down, compressed by the weight of the beast, and it feels hard as concrete against your hip bone. But then, you press your chest against the animal's side, and you feel it, the radiant, living heat thing. It is a biological furnace. A goat, or a cow if you were wealthy enough to own one, runs naturally hotter than a human being. Their body temperature sits a few degrees above yours, making them essentially a large, breathing hot water bottle covered in hair. You press closer, burying your face near the animal's shoulder to protect your nose from the biting frost beginning to form on the inside of the roof thatch. You can feel the slow, steady thump of its heart against your own ribs. You can feel the expansion of its lungs, a bellows of warmth that rises and falls, lulling you into a trance. This is the reality of the romantic cottage life. You aren't sleeping in a four-poster bed with a down comforter. You are engaged in a symbiotic exchange of thermodynamics with livestock. The separation between human and beast, so sharply defined in the modern world, does not exist here. You breathe the same air, recycled back and forth in the windowless gloom. You inhale the moisture of its breath. It inhales the dust from your clothes. In the deep winter, the family that sleeps with the pig survives. The family that insists on propriety freezes, but as the blessed heat begins to seep through your tunic, unthawing your stiff muscles, you are reminded of the price you pay for this warmth. The transaction is not free. As your body temperature rises, waking up the nerve endings that had gone numb from the cold, it also wakes up the other residents of the goat's coat. They are small, almost invisible in the daylight, and utterly undetectable in this total darkness, but you feel them instantly. The migration begins. Fleas, thriving in the dense, warm forest of the goat's fur, sense a new, softer host arriving next door. They interpret your arrival as the opening of a new restaurant. You feel the first prickle on your neck, then another on your wrist. It is a sharp, distinct sensation, different from the dull itch of the lice that live permanently in your wool tunic. The lice are slow, sluggish grazers. The fleas are frantic explorers. You feel them crawling up the inside of your sleeve, navigating the landscape of your skin with maddening speed. You want to scratch, to flail, to tear your clothes off and hunt them down. But you cannot. To move is to lose the heat. To thrash around is to startle the goat, which might decide to stand up and trot to the other side of the room, leaving you exposed to the freezing draft. So, you lie still. You grit your teeth and endure the sensation of tiny legs scurrying across your chest. You accept the biting as a necessary tax. This is the medieval compromise. You can be frozen and alone, or you can be warm and eaten alive. You have chosen the latter. You try to distract yourself by focusing on the sensation of the animal itself. The wool of the goat is greasy with lanolin, a waxy substance that rubs off onto your clothes and skin. It makes you feel sticky, coating you in a film that attracts dirt and holds the smell of the barn to your body long after you leave the house. You realize that you will never truly be clean. The concept of clean is a fantasy for people who don't have to spoon with farm animals to see the sunrise, even if you washed, which you won't, because the water in the bucket has already developed a crust of ice. The grease and the musk are embedded in the fibers of your very existence. The darkness presses down on you, heavy and absolute. There is no ambient light here, no glow from street lamps filtering through a window, no standby light from a television. It is a darkness so complete it feels like a physical weight on your eyelids. In this void, your sense of touch becomes hyperactive. You feel the rough straw poking through your leggings. You feel the vibration of the goat's stomach gurgling as it digests whatever scrub grass it managed to find today. You feel the damp cold of the mud floor seeping up, battling with the heat of the animal for control of your body. You might wonder why you don't just keep the fire going. It seems like such a simple solution. But wood is labor. Every log burned is a log you have to chop, haul, and dry. To burn wood while you sleep is a luxury of kings. Furthermore, in a house made of wattle, daub, and straw, with a floor covered in dry rushes, an unattended fire is a death sentence, one rolling log, one popping spark, and this entire hovel becomes an incinerator. So the fire dies and the goat lives. And the goat. You shift your leg, trying to find a position that doesn't cut off your circulation. The goat grunts, a low, guttural protest, and kicks out a leg, a hard hoof catching you squarely in the shin. You don't cry out, you just rub the spot in the dark and settle back down. You are the intruder here. After all, this is the animal's domain. You are just borrowing its thermal energy. As the minutes stretch into hours, a strange sort of comfort settles over you. It is the comfort of the herd. There is safety in this pile of bodies. Alone, you are vulnerable to the cold, to the spirits you fear in the dark, to the silence. But pressed against this living creature, hearing the rustle of your family in the straw nearby, you are part of a collective organism. You are just another mammal trying to make it to the morning. The pretenses of civilization, of art, of philosophy, of manners have all been stripped away by the temperature. You are reduced to the basics: heat, heartbeats, and the endless, maddening itch. The heat eventually wins the battle against your shivering. Your breathing slows. matching the rhythm of the beast beside you. The adrenaline of the day, the fear of the bailiff, the exhaustion of the field. The stress of the hunger begins to drain away, replaced by a heavy, leaden fatigue. You are warm enough to sleep. Not comfortable? Never comfortable. But warm enough to lose consciousness. You pull your rough wool cloak tighter around your ears, creating a cocoon to trap the precious animal heat. You close your eyes, though it makes no difference in the crushing blackness. You are ready to drift off, to escape the filth and the smell for a few hours. But the night in a medieval village is never truly silent. Just as the heaviness of sleep begins to pull you under, the world around you decides to wake up. The silence you hoped for is a lie. The darkness is full of noises, and now that you are still, they are all you can hear. The darkness presses against your eyeballs with a physical weight, a suffocating velvet hood that has been pulled tight over the entire hut. You blink. Once, twice. But the visual input remains identical whether your eyes are open or shut. There is only the void, and in this absence of sight, your other senses, unfortunately, sharpen to a painful degree. You might have expected that after a day of back-breaking labor in the fields, hauling water, and dodging the tanner's stench, sleep would come to you like a hammer blow, instant and merciful. You anticipated a blackout, a comatose state where the misery of the 14th century couldn't reach you. But you were wrong. The medieval night is not a time of peace. It is a time of acoustic torture. It begins with the breathing. You are not alone in this small, stifling space. You are packed into the communal sleeping area, perhaps a slightly raised wooden platform if you are lucky, or merely a patch of dry rushes on the earthen floor if you are not sandwiched between generations of your kin. To your left is the rhythmic, whistling wheeze of your grandfather, a sound like a broken bellows trying to fan a dying fire. The wood smoke that fills the hut during the day has done its work on his lungs, and every exhalation is a struggle that vibrates through the floorboards and into your own ribs. To your right, a sibling shifts and groans, muttering something incoherent in the grip of a fever dream. The heat of their body is cloying, a humid, sticky warmth that offers no comfort, only the damp sensation of shared sweat. You try to inch away, seeking a sliver of cool air, but you are trapped in the human pile, a necessary huddle to ward off the hypothermia waiting in the shadowy corners of the room. And then the coughing starts. It begins as a tickle in someone's throat across the room, a suppressed huff, before erupting into a jagged, wet hacking that tears through the silence like a saw blade. It is the soundtrack of the era. In a world without antibiotics, where the common cold can spiral into pneumonia in the span of a week, the sound of coughing is as constant as the ringing of the church bells. It echoes off the wattle and daub walls, a harsh, rattling noise that guarantees no one is getting deep REM sleep tonight. You lie there, tense, waiting for the fit to subside, counting the seconds between gasps, wondering if this is the night the coughing stops for good, or if it's just the prelude to another day of slow decline. Just as the coughing fit fades into a series of wet sniffles, the floor comes alive. You hear it first near the hearth, a faint scratching sound, like dry leaves being dragged over stone. Scritch, scritch, scritch. It stops. You hold your breath, straining your ears against the dark. Then, it starts again. Faster this time, like accompanied by a high-pitched, almost imperceptible squeak. Rats. Of course there are rats. They are the true owners of this house. You are merely the subletter who provides the warmth and the crumbs. You can hear them navigating the geography of the room with an arrogant familiarity. You imagine their sleek, greasy bodies undulating over the hard-packed earth, their whiskers twitching as they investigate the scent of the stale pottage left in the cauldron. The scratching draws closer. It moves from the hearth to the wall. And then, with a sinking feeling in your gut, you realize it is coming from the straw beneath you. The bedding you are lying on, that sack of prickly, molding rye straw, is not just a mattress. It is an ecosystem. You feel a sudden, distinct shifting inside the mattress, inches from your ear. Something small and heavy is burrowing through the stalks, making a nest directly under your head. You want to scream. You want to leap up, tear the sack open, and wage war on the vermin. But you don't. You are too tired, and the cold air outside the blanket is too biting. So you simply lift your head, punch the lump of straw aggressively in the hopes of startling the creature into moving elsewhere, and settle back down. The scratching stops for a moment, an indignant pause, before resuming a few feet away near your feet. This is the reality of the quiet country life. It is a constant, low-level warfare for territory between you and the animal kingdom. And it's not just the rats. Above you, in the thatch of the roof, birds that have nested in the eaves shift and flutter, disturbed by the wind or perhaps by a hunting weasel. The rafters groan and creak as the timber cools in the night air, popping with sudden, startling cracks that sound like gunshots in the silence. Even the livestock, separated from you by only a flimsy partition or perhaps not separated at all, contribute to the cacophony. The goat you huddled with earlier chews its cud with a wet, rhythmic smacking sound that is maddeningly repetitive. Every few minutes, it stamps a hoof, a dull thud that vibrates through the ground and into your spine. You try to focus on something else. Anything else. You try to let your mind drift. But the Middle Ages has one more trick up its sleeve to ruin your rest, the phenomenon of second sleep. You see, in this time, humans didn't typically sleep in one long, unbroken 8-hour block. That is a modern luxury born of artificial light and factory schedules. Here, the night is so long, especially in winter, that your body naturally wakes up in the middle of it. Your eyes snap open. You are wide awake. The exhaustion is there, sitting heavy in your limbs. But your brain is alert. It feels like morning, but the darkness is still absolute. You lie there, confused and frustrated. Is it midnight? Is it 3:00 a.m.? There is no glowing digital clock to tell you. No street lamp filtering through the window to give you a clue. You are simply awake in the void. Around you, others are stirring too. This is the watch, the period between the first sleep and the second sleep. In some households, people might use this time to pray, to tend the fire, or to quietly converse in the dark. But in your exhausted, lice-bitten state, it just feels like purgatory. You lie there, staring at nothing, your mind racing with the anxieties of the time. Will the harvest last the winter? Is that pain in your side a pulled muscle or the beginning of the flux? Did you lock the door against the bandits? Or is the wind pushing it open right now? The silence of the house during this waking period is heavy, loaded with the fear of the unseen. Without the distraction of labor, your mind is free to conjure up the demons and spirits that everyone tells you are real. Every creak of the house settling becomes a goblin's footstep. Every gust of wind whistling through the eaves sounds like a banshee's wail. You squeeze your eyes shut, trying to force the second sleep to come, but the harder you try, the more the lice seem to bite. You feel a sharp pinch on your shoulder, then another on your ankle. The fleas are active now, energized by your body heat. You scratch raw skin against coarse wool, a rasping sound that joins the symphony of the night. Scratch, 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 cough, cough, cough. The goat bleats softly. A rat knocks over a wooden cup somewhere in the dark. It is a sensory prison. You are trapped in your own body, keenly aware of every itch, every ache, every smell. The air in the hut has grown stale and thick. A miasma of unwashed bodies and animal musk that clogs your nose. You pull the rough blanket up over your head, trying to create a bubble of isolation, but it only traps the smell closer to your face. This is the romance of the past stripped bare. There are no silk sheets, no soundproofed walls, no white noise machines playing the sounds of a rainforest. There is only the hard earth, the biting cold, the biting bugs, and the endless shuffling noise of life continuing in the dark. You realize that you haven't truly experienced silence since you arrived here. The world is always grinding, chewing, coughing, and scratching. You turn over, your hip bone grinding into the lumpy straw, trying to find a position that hurts slightly less than the last one. You jam your cold hands into your armpits for warmth. You listen to the rhythm of the wheezing grandfather, trying to synchronize your own breathing with his, trying to find a pattern in the chaos that can lull you back under. It takes a long time. The watch drags on for what feels like hours, a stretch of boredom and discomfort that tests your sanity. But eventually, the sheer physical toll of the day begins to win the battle against the environment. The noises don't stop. The rats are still scurrying. The family is still coughing, but they begin to blur at the edges. The sharp anxiety of the darkness softens into a dull, heavy gray. Your body, defeated by the labor of the fields and the weight of the day, finally surrenders. The sensory input begins to fade, not because the room has improved, but because your brain simply cannot process the misery any longer. It shuts down as a defense mechanism. You stop hearing the scratch of the claws. You stop feeling the itch of the wool. You stop smelling the smoke. You are drifting, sinking, falling away from the filth and the noise, moving towards the only escape available to you. And just like that, the fight goes out of you. It isn't a conscious decision to relax, because relaxation is a luxury you cannot afford, and a concept you barely understand. This is a collapse. It is the biological surrender of a body that has been pushed past the point of endurance. A machine run without oil, grinding to a halt not because the work is done, but because the fuel is gone. The transition isn't peaceful. It's heavy. It feels like a physical weight pressing you down into the damp earth of the floor. Your limbs, which have spent the last 14 hours lifting, pulling, dragging, and tearing at the resistant world, now feel like lead weights sewn into your skin. The dull ache in your lower back, the one that started when you lifted that first bucket of water at dawn, has settled into a persistent, throbbing rhythm. A drumbeat of pain that pulses in time with your slowing heart. You don't try to find a comfortable position. There isn't one. The concept of comfort is relative here. Comfort is simply the absence of active motion. Comfort is just the moment you stop moving. The darkness inside the hut is absolute in a way that modern eyes can scarcely comprehend. There are no standby lights blinking on a television, no street lamps casting an orange glow through a window, no ambient light pollution reflecting off the clouds. When the fire in the center of the room burns down to low, sullen embers, the blackness is total. It is a thick, suffocating velvet that presses against your open eyes, indistinguishable from the blindness of closing them. You are floating in a void, tethered to reality only by the sensations of the filth around you. You can hear the breathing of the room. It's a crowded, raspy chorus. To your left, the rhythmic wheezing of your family members, packed together for warmth, a tangle of limbs and rough wool. To your right, the heavier, muskier exhalations of the livestock. The goat you are huddled against shifts, its coarse hair scratching against your cheek, its body heat radiating through your thin tunic. It smells of wet fur and old hay, a pungent, earthy odor that fills your nose, masking the sharper stench of the unwashed bodies around you. You don't recoil from it. You lean into it. That goat is your radiator. That goat is the reason you won't freeze to death before sunrise. In this world, the barrier between human and animal has dissolved. You are all just warm blood trying to outlast the cold night. You might think that exhaustion guarantees a full night's rest, a solid 8 hours of oblivion, but history tells a different, more fragmented story. You are drifting towards what your ancestors called the firsty sleep. It is a deep, coma-like dive into unconsciousness that will last perhaps 4 hours. Then, the silence of the night will be broken. You will wake up. Everyone does. It is the time of the watch, the period between the first and second sleep. In that strange, waking intermission in the dead of night, you might groggily tend to the fire to ensure the embers don't die completely. You might murmur a prayer into the darkness, the Latin words tumbling out of your mouth more from muscle memory than contemplation, a plea for protection against the sparks that burn down thatched roofs and the sicknesses that steal breath in the night. You might just lie there, staring into the black, listening to the scuffing of claws as the rats become bold, venturing out from the walls to scavenge for the crumbs of that grit-filled bread you dropped hours ago. But that is for later. Right now, you are still falling. The mental load of the day dissolves. There is no anxiety about tomorrow's meetings, no replay of awkward social interactions, no existential dread about your career path. The medieval mind in this moment is blessedly, brutally simple. You survived. You ate. You are warm enough. The hierarchy of needs has been flattened down to its base layer. Your brain, starved of calories and overstimulated by physical exertion, simply shuts down the higher functions. There's no room for philosophy when your hands are blistered and your belly is only half full of gray pottage. The sensory details begin to blur together into a singular, dull hum. The itch of the lice, which has plagued you since you put on your clothes this morning, fades into the background noise of your nervous system. You no longer feel the individual bites. It's just a vague, prickly heat that you accept as part of your skin. The smoke, that ever-present, acrid fog that stings your eyes and coats your throat, settles in your lungs. You don't cough anymore. You just breathe it in, shallow and slow, tasting the burnt oak and the dried dung fuel. A flavor that will coat your tongue until you die. The straw beneath you is damp, molding slowly from the moisture rising up from the earthen floor. It smells of mildew and decay, a sweet, rotting scent that marks the cycle of life and death playing out right under your ribs. But the straw softens. The hard-packed dirt softens. The biting cold that has been nipping at your extremities all day seems to retreat, pushed back by the heavy blanket of exhaustion. You feel a final, involuntary twitch in your leg, a hypnic jerk as your muscles finally give up their tension. It's the body checking to see if you are really ready to let go, if it's safe to power down the defenses, and it is. For now, the bandits are outside the walls. The wolves are in the forest. The plague is in the next village. But here, in the dark, pressed between a snoring relative and a shivering goat, you are suspended in time. The noise of the wind howling through the cracks in the wattle and daub walls transforms into a lullaby. It's a lonely, hollow sound, reminding you of the vast, empty wilderness that surrounds your tiny pocket of civilization. But it also reminds you that you are inside. You have shelter. You have defeated the elements for one more rotation of the earth. Your breathing slows. It matches the rhythm of the goat, the rhythm of the sleeper beside you. You become part of the collective organism of the household, a single breathing entity hiding in the dark. The thoughts trail off images of the furrowed field, the heavy bucket, the spinning wheel. They fragment and dissolve into the shapeless gray mist of sleep. You are no longer a person with a name and a history. You are just a body at rest, You sink deeper, past the hunger, past the cold, past the fear. You drift away from the filth, leaving the muck of the alley and the stench of the tanner's pit behind in the waking world. You fall into the medieval dark, a deep, dreamless void where, for a few precious hours, nothing hurts, nothing is heavy, and nothing demands your labor. You have made it through the day. And in the brutal calculus of the Middle Ages, that is the only victory that matters. You spent the day shivering in damp wool, breaking your teeth on gritty bread, hauling water that might kill you, and working until your hands bled, all to end up sleeping on the floor with the livestock just to stay warm. So tonight, like when you slip into your clean bed with indoor plumbing, antibiotics, and central heating, maybe say a quiet thank you to the modern world and to your ancestors who fought the mud, the hunger, and the cold so you wouldn't have to. You have earned your rest in a way they never could. Sweet dreams.